Back here with Lake Lewis, After Practice Podcast and NFL Insider. And Lake, I mean, really, Lake, we already knew that the Commanders were going to take a quarterback. And Jayden Daniels, we knew that he would probably be their guy. And as Adam Peters said on the first night, is that they already knew that this was their guy. They liked everything about him. But you were there in Detroit and got a chance to talk to Daniels. Could you talk a little bit about what you saw in him in talking to him? Because he seems like he's a down-to-earth guy and that the Commanders are getting a winner all the way around, but it has to be, seen on the field. But, again, you got a chance to talk to him up there in Detroit. Talk a little bit about Daniels and what you saw in him.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, very, very humble kid, and he knows his role. Even some of the stuff we talked about, off of the post that I had, even in press conference, he said that, when asked about being a franchise quarterback, he said, no, I'm just a rookie. He said, I still have to earn everything, and I haven't done anything yet. So just to hear that kind of rhetoric come out of his mouth, because a lot of guys who are drafted in the top 2-3 picks in the NFL draft or any professional sports draft, they may feel like they've arrived and they haven't done anything yet. So he understands his role, he understands his place. And one of the other things that I was really happy to hear him say was, I asked him as far as what would he say to the fan base, as far as just his knowing his role. And he said he understands the importance of it. And he said he also knows the history. And he said he's spoken to Doug Williams and guys like that. And he also said that he embraces being, an African-American quarterback, yet another one coming into the league. And hopefully he can shine a light for, as he said, younger, black potential quarterbacks that, you can do it.
Hey, like, what do you like most about him? Because Adam Peters talked about this is not a kid that you're looking at. Already he's kind of like a man.
Yeah.
And when you look at his maturity, also what he did on the football field and then off the football field, what would you say about that? Adam Peters talking about, hey, you know what? We ain't even dealing with a boy. We dealing with a young man.
Yeah, he's mature beyond his years. And, I think sometimes people have to understand when you see that exuberance that he shows, when he came to the podium, I mean, he was hyped up. He was excited. Don't mistake that for immaturity or silliness. No, this guy's competitive. He wants to win. He wants to be great. And that's what you want. But the other thing that I do like about him, and having, done some research on him, obviously this is well before the draft and even the combines for that matter. This is a guy that's doing a lot in the community. He's a guy that is well liked, and anyone you talk to about him, they all use like the same words, just like a kind, guy, a soft-spoken soul, so that's what you want. You want a guy that's going to be able to galvanize your locker room, be a leader, but be a team first guy. And I think that that's what he is. And let's face it, Donna, we've covered a lot of quarterbacks that have come into Washington, and there's been a lot of sometimes unnecessary, pressure thrusted on them. And sometimes it's been pressure that they've pulled on themselves. But I think that this guy's going to be walking into a really good situation where it's new ownership, new GM, new coach, and everybody's rowing in the same direction. So there is no fractured, point building. Absolutely. They're all rowing in the same direction. And I think for him, he's going to be able to come in and do well and be put in a good position, because let's face it, when you're drafted 1, 2, or 3 in the draft as a quarterback, you're probably going to a pretty bad team that has no weapons for you. That's not the case here. He's got a Pro Bowl receiver in Terry McLaurin, who's still underrated. And you have Jahan Dotson, who looks to, rebound from his second year and have a really strong third year. And then you have, of course, they went out and got a veteran tight end in Zach Ertz. So now you have that with Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler, who you brought in. And who's to say that they don't grab a receiver in the second round of today's draft, because I think they are. He's going to be put in a really good situation to be successful in his rookie campaign.
Hey, like you talking about the receivers, but before they get any receivers or anybody else, they better get some offensive linemen. But we'll talk a little bit about that on day two, as far
Right.
as what the Commanders are going to be looking to get with the two picks in that this round coming up. But let's go back to as far as Daniels a little bit.
Mhm.
Kingsbury, Cliff Kingsbury, he fits his system to the T. With when you
Yeah.
look at the quarterbacks that he has had over the time. But when you look at the tools as far as Daniels, the speed and Adam Peters talks about that a little bit, about his speed and how he's able to, to change things on the dime, and that kind of speed. It's like Lamar Jackson or some of those players. Could you talk about just his tools, as far as his abilities out there, and what that speed is going to mean? And to me, he's already a little advanced, being that this is the guy that, or the type of guy that Kingsbury likes in his offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have to understand that when you look at a lot of young quarterbacks, you look at all the tools that they have, and a lot of it's built on potential because they haven't played a whole lot. The way college football works, some guys may have 2 years under their belt as far as a starter, if not 1 year. And the difference between Jayden Daniels, though, is that this is a guy that has 5 years of football. I mean, one of it was cut short, I think, his sophomore year at Arizona State. But other than that, he didn't miss a game.
Yeah.
Talk about the durability. He's going to get knocked out of games because of the way he plays and he's thin. He performed at the highest of levels in the Pac-12 and the SEC. I mean,
And Adam Peters talked about that. He performed at the high level in the SEC against those caliber
yeah,
teams.
against the Alabamas and Floridas and Georgia. So stop it, because a lot of this first round was a lot of those players from those schools. So, this is a guy that knows his game. He knows his body. He knows how to, extend plays, and that's what you need in the NFL now. No one's saying that these things about Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, who can run as well, but don't get it confused that Jayden is a pass first guy, not a run first guy. He just happens to be able to be dynamic when he does pull it down. And I think, as Adam Peters said, he does. He'll take the soul out of a defense, but by having a 40-yard gain or a home run, pass or whatever. So I just think that they're getting a guy that has every weapon in the tool shed, and they're going to have him using them. So it's not going to be one of those things where you can say, well, he can run, but they never let him run. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be eerily similar to LSU.
Yeah, this is the guy with the strong lung. But I like what Adam Peters said. What you just mentioned is take the soul out of it. I mean, that's kind of bad. I mean,
Demoralizing, right?
exactly. So we're looking at the day one draft and everything. You look at that offensive players were the ones who were taken mostly in that first round. Not too many defensive players, and then the top 12 spots, you had 5 quarterbacks. That's pretty much unheard of, because it seemed like everybody was in need of quarterbacks. So when you look at that whole scope of people taking offensive linemen, whether it was wide receivers or quarterbacks, the offense was basically the focus for a lot of teams in that first round. So when you look at the first round, who was the winners? Because you look at Chicago getting Caleb Williams, and then they go down and get big wide receivers. Chicago is going to be a dangerous team on both sides of the ball on offense, because they got DJ Moore already and some of the other people on that offense. And now you add a few more pieces to the puzzle. They were already shoring up that defense. Who was the biggest winners to you? And you look at Atlanta getting, and everybody had question marks right there, taking Pennis. It's like, what? Wait a minute, what about Kirk Cousins and all that? What did you make of the draft day one overall?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I thought Chicago was the big winner. I think Washington was a winner too, but I do think Chicago, because you're right. I mean, they have DJ Moore for Caleb Williams. You have Keenan Allen, who you brought in from the Chargers via free agency. And now you draft Rome Odunze, at number 9. He's another big physical receiver from out of Washington. He played with Michael Penix at Washington. So they're loaded. I mean, Cole Kmet, they're tight end. So Caleb Williams is coming into probably the best ever position for a number 1 draft pick at quarterback, as far as the talent that he's walking into. They're a team that could be a playoff ready football team. The problem is going to be for Chicago is that they're in the same division with the upstart Lions and the upstart Packers. So
It's going to be a fun division and everything because
absolutely.
Chicago already had running backs. So they had all the pieces put together.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a fun division overall. But let's go back to the Atlanta. What are you making of that?
Well, when you really take a step back and understand that how many backup quarterbacks did we see play in the NFL last year as far as starting? It was like 50 something backups at some point started games in the NFL last year. 50 something. That means teams were going into their second and third level of their quarterback rooms because of injuries to their starters.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is none of those backups were guys that teams really considered to be part of their future. They just happened to be guys that were on the roster at that current time.
And they had to play.
And they had to play. So I think a lot of the thought process as far as some of these quarterbacks that were drafted was, one, they were first round potential quarterbacks. But I don't expect for a lot of them to hit the field anytime soon, except for Jayden and except for Caleb Williams. So with that said, teams were like, you know what? Why not draft a quarterback that we know potentially and hopefully will be our quarterback of the future, but we can groom them and keep our fingers crossed that they don't have to hit the field, at least not in the first half of a season. But if they do have to hit the field, ultimately, they're going to be our guy anyway, so we can play them and develop them at the same time. So I think from an Atlanta standpoint, it was just a shock because Kirk Cousins had just signed that massive contract. And, he's a guy that's produced great regular season numbers, but hasn't won, in the playoffs. I think he has one playoff one under his belt. So Michael Penix is sitting there and the Falcons are thinking, hey, this is a guy that would be graded really high, right up there with Caleb and Jayden Daniels, and he's available. So why not take him? It's a little strange to me, though, because Michael Penix is 26 years old. Yeah. So if you're drafting a 26-year-old guy to sit behind Kirk Cousins for 2-3 years, by the time he hits the field, he'll be 29, potentially 30 years old. That's a long time down the road. So what it shows me is that they don't see Kirk Cousins being there long term.
I was just getting ready to say that. Like you were talking all this stuff about, the backup sitting back, being, grooming them for 4 years. No, I don't think Kirk Cousins is looking at it that way. He's probably saying, man, you just paid me all this money to come here. He's coming off of an injury and you bring in Penix, another quarterback, like you said, his age already 26. But Kirk better be looking over his shoulders because we know what happened, up in Seattle when Russell Wilson went up there and they had the veteran quarterback coming from Green Bay. He ended up beating him out. So it could be a thing like that, but it's going to be interesting. So day 2 for the Washington Commanders, they've got 5 picks left. They've got 2 in the early rounds. Now, Adam Peters was talking about they were looking at things even last night. But let me just tell you, you mentioned a wide receiver and all that. Like, if they don't get 2 offensive linemen with those next 2 picks, I'm going to make you grow some new hair on your head because come on. We talked about the quarterback, you talked about all the receivers here in Washington and so forth. It doesn't mean anything if they don't shore up that offensive line and that left tackle. They gotta look how many teams in that first round offensive lineman.
Yeah,
and I know they need a corner, but I'm telling you, 2 of the next pick better be offensive linemen.
Well, I just don't think that there is a guy that's going to be a difference maker left as far as the offensive lineman. All the time.
Adam Peters said that it is. They got some great guys still out there.
They do. I don't know if they start from there.
Yeah. This was a draft for offensive linemen.
Yeah, well, no, it was a draft. It was a draft for offensive tackles. And for Washington, as far as the linemen that are left on it, it's a lot of guards, and they don't need that. They really don't need that. I mean, Sam Cosmi's a Pro Bowl guy waiting to happen this year at guard. And then you have some guys on the other side that have guard experience. That's where they have their most depth on their roster right now as a guard. Ricky Strongberg is a guy that they're going to take a look at. And he was a 3rd round pick from last year. So I think the tackle run is over as far as this year's draft. I mean, unless there's somebody that I'm totally missing out on, there may be one guy sitting there, but is he going to be there at 36? So if that one guy that's sitting there that they like is there at 33 when the draft starts today, maybe you move up. But I would not move my 36 and 40 to move up to 33 for
not unless you get a quality
he'd have to be
player.
he'd have to be a guy that's going to start for me. And if not, then I'm going to go. You can look at AD Mitchell from Texas, big wide receiver that's still sitting there. They have Marshawn Nealon, who's a great edge rusher from Western Michigan. He's sitting out there. You can never have enough pass rushers. You have the guy Edrin Cooper.
You need one.
Yeah, Edrin Cooper, a linebacker. I mean, there's some dogs, Donna, that are still sitting there, and they're going to walk away with two of them because they're picking at 4 and 8 as far as their number in the second round. So this is going to be really
people were saying that a lot of people that were projected to go earlier, they were not, because people went after those needs on the offensive side of the ball. But Lake, yeah. I'm gonna let you go because I know you got to go get that suit because you were like styling and profiling on day one with that bright. I like that bright pop of color that you had. But when the draft is all over, we have to go back and see who the Commanders filled their roster with the draft and see how we grade them, and then how we grade the other teams that the Commanders are going to face in the NFC East division. So I'm going to let you go. It's always great for you to come on, share your knowledge and everything, but go do some work. What color are you wearing tonight?
Blue. I'm just gonna go with the, with you can never have. I got so many blue suits.
Jake is toning down tonight. He's toning down. He had to break out like the guys did with the bright colors, but he's toning down a little bit. We both got on blue, but I'm kind of like dressed down blue.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have a little mix with the color up in the top with the blue. So you'll
Lake,
like it.
Always great. You can catch Lake after practice podcast.
Yes.
And then also NFL Insider. So Lake, I'm gonna let you go. And as Tony said, always, we don't say goodbye, we say in a minute.